Okay, so my number one, put it up here, says we're supposed to find the term on the end that would complete this and make it a perfect square trinomial. So x squared plus 9x plus what? And the really quick trick on this, that middle term, so it's going to be half of that. So I'm going to divide it by 2, and then I'm going to square it. Everybody's is odd, so it means it's going to be a fraction. It's not going to divide nicely. Leave it as a fraction. 9 halves. Now what's 9 halves squared? Well, 9 squared is 81. 2 squared is 4, so it's be 81 over 4. So that's your step A, I guess. It's not really an A. It's not labeled as A. But then your second part is, what is the factored form of this? So what does this equal? This would equal x plus 9 halves squared. So when you took half of that number and put it here, that's what is the constant for the binomial. So you can kind of, how that affects yours. Yours is obviously going to be a little bit different than mine, but it's always half number squared goes here, then half that number goes here. So x plus whatever the half that number is squared. This a little bit. And I'll leave it in the screen, so if you're still working on that, it's still on the screen. Number 2, I got 5x squared plus x plus 8. And I'm supposed to find the discriminant first, which is it's going to be a number. It's going to be a value. And then I got to say whether, or how many solutions, how many real solutions. Is it no real solutions? Is it 1 real solution? Is it 2 real solutions? So first off, the discriminant is b squared minus 4ac. So my b on this one is 1, so it'll be 1 squared minus 4 times a times c. And without finding the answer, I can tell it's going to be a really big negative number. So I got 1 minus something big. And so it's going to be a really big negative. I know it's going to be no real solutions. Because if this equals a negative, there's no real solutions. If it equals 0, there's 1 real solution. If it equals a positive number, that means there's 2 real solutions. So this one is, let's see, 1 minus 4 times 5 times 8. So it'd be negative 159 for mine. Pencil doesn't show up very well sometimes. So any questions on the first two? Yeah, let my cursor go. There we go. Okay, number 3. Here's my problem, and it says to solve by graphing. So first off, make it equal to 0. Bring everything to one side. So this will be 11x squared plus 10x and minus 1. And that's what I'm going to type into the calculator. I'll go to y equals, see this, so y equals 11x squared plus 10x minus 1. And I get something like that. So I got 2 zeros. There's 2 places where it's hitting the x-axis. Going to do a quick little sketch over here so I can draw on it. It looks something like that. Now, if I want to find this 0 on the calculator, it's going to ask me for a left bound and a right bound. I think that's where most mistakes are made, is that left and right bound stuff. Okay, so on this 0, if I'm to the left, I'm going to have to be a little bit above. If I'm to the right, I need to be below. So my cursor, left bound here, right bound here. Now my 0 is between those 2 lines. That's what I want. So when I push second calc down to 0. Left bound, again, I need to be above. That way it's actually considered being to the left of. Okay, so if I'm a little bit above, I'm to the left of it. Makes a line. To be a right bound, to be a little bit to the right, I need to be below. If I look, my 0 is between those 2 lines. You may see better on your calculator, but you better be between those 2 lines. And then for a guess, you can just hit enter again. I get negative 1. Now to do the other 0, if this is a 0 right here, when it asks for a left bound, to be to the left means you're below. So my left bound I want to be below, my right bound I have to be above. Okay, so second calc, 0. Again, for a left bound, make sure you're a little bit below it. For a right bound, be a little bit above it. And then for guess, just hit enter again. And I got 0.09 for mine. Yours is probably going to be a little bit different. Not sure how much different, but pretty close. So that's how I use the calculator. Number 4, we got 3x squared minus 33 equals 0. And they want me to solve by taking square roots. Okay, so if I need to solve by taking square roots, don't factor it, you could actually factor on one of your steps and still use square roots on this, but don't use quadratic formula, don't use graphing. We need to see square root. So somewhere I need to see you get something squared by itself and then square root. I think the easiest way on this one is the thing being squared is x. So x squared, so I need to get that by itself. I need to isolate the x squared, so I need to add 33 over. So it gives me 3x squared equals 33. Divide by 3. So x squared would equal 11. And now on this step, now that I have the thing being squared by itself, square root. Anytime you're square root and you're solving, make sure you put a plus and a minus. Plus minus radical 11. Number 5. Number 5, supposed to be a 5. We're going to do complete the square. So x squared minus 4x. I'm going to leave a little space and put plus 3. So again, I want to complete the square, which means it's kind of like a number 1. We said write the number that would make this a perfect square trinomial. That's exactly what I'm trying to do here. Okay, so to find that, I'm going to do half of 4, half of negative 4, which is negative 2. Negative 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to add 4 to this, so that left side is a perfect square trinomial. But if I just added 4 to the left side, I got to add 4 to the right side too. Got to make it fair. So 3 plus 4 is 7. On the left side, what binomial squared equals that trinomial? Well, that's the same thing we did up here too. Part B, it says what binomial squared equals that? That's what they want here too. So half of negative 4 is negative 2. The x minus 2 squared equals 7. Now square root. And when I write this down, I always leave a gap. I leave a little space here and put plus or minus radical 7. And the reason for that little gap is I'm going to bring this over. If it's a minus 2, it means I need to add 2 to both sides. So I want to add 2 to both sides. So x would equal 2 plus radical 7 and 2 minus radical 7. You can just put plus or minus if you want. You don't have to write them as 2 separate things. Questions on that? Yeah, I'm going to post this video later if you feel like if I went too fast or it helped to see it slower, we can pause it. And then number 6 is quadratic formula. So mine is, they have 7 equals negative 4x squared minus 9x. Before you use quadratic formula, make sure it equals 0. So I want to bring the 7 over. I'm going to subtract 7, and now this becomes 0. I got my A, my B, and my C. Just, make sure you keep it negative with it. Keep it negative in there with them. So I've got quadratic formula, negative B, so the opposite of B would be 9. Plus or minus, and then under the square root, b squared. which I'm just going to square it in my head. Negative 9 squared is 81. That prevents the calculator from making a mistake. Like if you type in negative 9 squared, it gives you negative 81. Whole answer is wrong now because of the way you typed it in the calculator. But if you just do it in your head real quick, negative 9 squared is 81. So b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. You plugging in your numbers in there. And in the calculator, I'm just going to do what's under the radical first. 81 minus 4 times negative 4 times negative 7. This gives me a negative 31. So simplifying that a little bit. Now, we never want a negative on bottom. So if I got a positive divided by a negative, that's just a negative, right? So I can just put a negative 9. And now the 8's positive, plus or minus. Now with negative 31, well, 31 you can't simplify, but the negative comes out as an I. So I radical 31. That'd be mine. Number 7. And number 7 is what I'm going to take a little extra time on, because if you're following along, well, first off, a lot of people missed it. And second, if you're following along, you probably need some time in the intermediate step to do yours. So I'm going to write it down and help you, but I will pause for a long time, and I'm just waiting for you to catch up. So my number 7 is 5x squared minus 22x plus 17. And if this is larger than 1, it's easier to use that method we showed you where you do the crisscross thing, make an X. So for yours, take 5 times 17, or take your first number and your last number. So mine's 5 times 17 is 85. And then write down your linear number down here. And you want to figure out what two numbers multiply to give you the big number on top and add to give you the number on bottom. So this is where I'm going to give you a second to find yours. Mine's almost a little too easy. Yours is probably going to take more time. But if you're looking at it, you don't see it, take your top number, write all the factors of the top number. So if I do all the factors of 85, I get 1 in 85. 2 doesn't go into it, 3, 4, 5 goes into it, 17 times. I'm not sure what else goes into it. That's my only factors. Yeah, that's the only two factors I have. But do your whole list, and like for mine, if it's a positive product, they must both be negative. Which one of these add to be negative 22? What's this one? So mine is negative 5, negative 17. Which means I'm going to take, so the first term and the last term stay. So 5x squared plus 17, they stay where they're at. But instead of negative 22x, I'm going to write that as negative 5x minus 17x, which equals negative 22x. I just split it up. I chose that order because the negative 5 factors with the 5, and the negative 17 factors with the 17. We can do a second one of these too. If somebody has one they're just really stuck on, you can give it to me and I'll do it in a second here. So now this one, split it up. They're both divisible by 5x, so x minus 1 Oops. These are both divisible by negative 17. If you do it right, these binomials should match. And if they both have that binomial in them, factor that out. So if I took this out of both of those, the only thing left would be 5x minus 17. Of course, they do want to know what is x equal. In the end, we got to write down what is x equal. So mine would be 1, and this one would be 17/5. Does anybody have one that they're really stuck on? The function, they just can't figure it out how to factor it? What you got, Dale? Plus, what was it, 8x? And then equals 21, so I'll do minus 21 equals 0. So I bring that over. So on this one, I'm going to take 5 times negative 21. So I got negative 105. And then this is 8. Now, if it's a negative, that means one of them's negative, one of them's positive. If it's a negative product, so I keep that in mind, which means these two factors are going to be 8 units apart. So do all the factors of 105. So 1 and 105. 3 is going to go into it, actually. Let's see. Yeah, 3 will go into it 35 times. 5 go into it 21 times. 7 and 15. And that's it. Yep, those are all the factors. So if I go through all those and look which ones are 8 units apart, it's these two. And if the sum is positive, it means the 15, the bigger one's positive. So it'd be 15 to 7. So which one of these numbers would factor more easily with 5? The 15, right? So I'm going to put plus 15x. And the 7 factors nicely with 21. So I'm going to write my 8x, I'm going to write it as plus 15x minus 7x instead. Cut it in half. These are both divisible by 5x. Be x plus 3. These are both divisible by negative 7. X plus 3. They share an x plus 3, so factor that out. And all that's left then is 5x minus 7. That means x equals negative 3 and 7/5. Let's go number 8. The number 8, which I assume everyone's word problem's the same, has a girl standing on the edge of her dorm roof and drops a ball into the air. My function is h equals negative 16t squared plus 48t plus 288. And my step A says the ball will hit the ground after how many seconds? Well, what's the height when the ball hits the ground? If the ball hits the ground, the height's 0. So I'm going to plug a 0 in for h. And I want to find what t's make this equal 0. So that's a factoring or quadratic formula or complete a square, any of those things. So from here on out, you get to pick which method you want to use. I think quadratic formula is going to be the easiest one. So whenever I did quadratic formula, negative 48 plus or minus 48 squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2 times a. If you want to type it all in the calculator at once, make sure the top's in parentheses and the bottom's in parentheses. And I'm just going to My answers were 6 and -3. If you need a second to do yours, you can type it all in, but or you can type it in later if you want to, so you don't fall behind if you don't want to fall behind. But 6 seconds or -3 seconds, well, it's 6 seconds because it can't go -3 seconds. And then for part B, they want to know how tall is the dorm building. Well, the ball is at the top of the dorm building at t equals 0 because before time started, the moment right before it was released. So that means if I plug 0 in for t, 0 here and 0 here means they wipe out. All you're left is 288. So that's a y-intercept question. Number 9, I've got simplify the expression. So I got 5 plus I times 4 minus 8i. And this one, it's a multiplication. You're not adding, not subtracting. It's multiplication. So we can FOIL it out. So 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times -8i is -40i. And then I times 4 is 4i. -8i squared. Now before you start adding like terms together, let's simplify the I squared. What is I squared? I squared is the same thing as -1. So if I have -8 times -1, that's just going to switch the sign to +8. It'll be a +8. Now add like terms. So 20 plus 8 is 28. -40i plus 4i is -36i. That'd be your final answer. Number 10. Here's mine. Now before I try to add these together, get everything in terms of I, because I got some radical negatives here. So the square roots of negatives. So square root of -1, that's actually I. That is exactly the definition of I. So it'll be 9 plus I. Plus -6 plus, now square root of -64. The negative comes out as an I. Now what's the square root of 64? 8. So it's the same thing as -6 plus 8i. Now do addition. Okay, don't multiply or anything else. We're going to do addition. So add like terms. 9 plus -6, 3. I plus 8i, whoops, plus 9i. Plus 9i. And number 11. You don't know what's I squared, what's I to the third, and what's I to the fourth. So actually, we did this in our notes way back when we did it. I can't remember what, like day 4, I think it was. First off, I is radical -1. That's the definition of I. So if I wanted to know what I squared is, square both sides. What's the square root of -1 squared? It'd be -1. I cubed would be the same thing as I squared times I. So this equals the same thing as I squared times I, which is -1 times I, which you could just say is -I. Now if I took this is I cubed. So think about I cubed times I, because that'd be I to the fourth. It's just the previous one times I. So I cubed was -I. I'm going to multiply that by I. What's -I squared? I squared is -1, so the opposite of -1 is 1. You can just keep going with that too. Like we say, or I should say every I squared is -1. So if I said what's I to the 6th? Well, there's three I squareds in there, so we got -1 times itself 3 times. It's going to be positive or negative? Negative, right? Negative times negative times negative is negative. So it'd be negative 1. Or if I said I to the 8th, what would I to the 8th be? That's 4 pairs of I squareds, or I should say 4 I squareds, and every one's a negative 1, so you got negative 1 times itself 4 times. So a negative times a negative times a negative times a negative is positive, right? So that'd be a positive 1. And just keep cycling through. Keep cycling through those. So that was 11. Number 12. We're almost done. We're getting there. Number 12. We got 7 plus 2i. Number one, or first thing I'm supposed to do is find the complex conjugate. That'd be 7 minus 2i. So that's my first answer, 7 minus 2i. Just switch the sign between them. That's the complex conjugate. And then it says find their product. Well, when we find our product, when we're done, it should be a number. It should be just a number. If I multiply these out, FOIL, 7 times 7 is 49. If I took the outer plus the inner, so this would be 7 times negative 2i is negative 14i. This is plus 14i. Negative 14i plus 14i is gone. They cancel each other out. So if you wrote down the conjugate, you don't even need to do those because they will always wipe each other out. Now I've got the last. So 2i times negative 2i. Well, a positive times a negative is negative. 2 times 2 is 4. I times I is I squared. We just said in the last problem, I squared is the same thing as negative 1. So negative 4 times negative 1 is actually a plus 4. 49 plus 4 is 53. And then the last one, I'm not super... I do need to see substitution, but then after that, it's up to you. I'm not really worried about how you solved it, but I do need to see substitution. So for number 13, mine was y equals x squared plus 4x plus 9, and y equals negative x plus 5. And so keep in mind what could be answers here, or what does the answer even look like? Well, the answers are ordered pairs. So we're trying to find out what coordinates make these meet each other. So if I got a U shape and a line, well, I could never hit it. I could hit it once, or I could hit it twice. But either way, it should be coordinates, an x and a y that go together. So to solve this, use a substitution. If these both equal y, set them equal to each other. So x squared plus 4x plus 9 equals y, which y equals negative x plus 5. So that means that equals negative x plus 5. And in order to solve a quadratic like that, it needs to be set equal to 0. So I'm going to bring everything to the left side. So add x, subtract 5. So x squared plus 5x plus 4 equals 0. Again, if you want to do quadratic formula, you can. If you want to factor, complete the square, whatever method you want to use. This one does factor pretty easily, so I want to use factoring, but if you use quadratic formula, you get the same answers. It's really up to you. But I'm going to do factoring because I need to find two numbers that multiply to give me 4, add to give me 5. And that's pretty easy. So 4 and 1. Now this means that x equals negative 1. I'm sorry, negative 4 and negative 1. I think what a lot of people did as a mistake is right there they circled their answer. So negative 4, negative 1, they put that in, and Math Excel counted it wrong. What it is, those are both x values. Those are both x values. And I'm looking for ordered pairs, x's and y's that go together. So they're basically saying these are equal when x is negative 4 and when x is negative 1. So I need to find the y's that go with those x's. So if I plug in negative 4, and for x, which I would just use the linear one, you can use either one, but that one looks easier to me. So opposite of negative 4 is 4. 4 plus 5 is 9. Plug in negative 1. The opposite of negative 1 is 1. 1 plus 5 is 6. That'd be your two coordinates then. Any questions on those? I'll stop my video here.